Okay.
I'm gonna get my act together sometime.
I see we're being live streamed. Shall I just start with the usual introductions or is there more preliminaries?
You know what? No, let me now. Okay, yep, here we are. So yeah, just start with introduction. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is Bruce Rawls and Lynn Johnson. And as we've been doing for years now, we're reading from things that inspire us from A Course in Miracles. And for several weeks, actually a few months now, we've been reading Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles by Kenneth Wapnick, PhD, from Foundation for A Course in Miracles. And we are in chapter 6 and on letter 6. This is the 6th letter that Helen wrote to Bill. And it's in the print version of the book on the bottom of page 163.
Um,
So, shall I pick up where we left off?
absolutely.
Okay. So, in letter 6, Ken begins, another quote, letter unquote follows, which Helen wrote to Bill while at the medical center, waiting in her office for him to return to their private offices in another building. And this is Helen's letter. It is my impression that this report is crucial, not for the past, but for the future. The questions, in parentheses, and the vision, close print, were for you through me. Okay. And now on page 164. And since this begins from last night, you weren't there at the time. The picture that came to me before I went to sleep was of a dark sky with only one star in it. The star was very bright, but also very distant. But in spite of its distance, there was one perfectly uninterrupted ray beaming out from it and reaching your forehead in the center. I did ask for an explanation, brackets from Jesus, of this, and I believe we both need it. But explanations are not generally necessary and should stop before we get bogged down in the past. Thus far, but no further. The theme that is to run all the way through here is the word one, in quotes. And 8. So Ken resumes his commentary. The dark sky is the ego's world of fear and guilt, in parentheses, the self definition, lowercase s, self, while the one star is the Christ that is the true definition of our self, capital S self. This self seems to be, quote, very distant, in quotes, but access to it can be gained in an instant through that, quote, uninterrupted ray, unquote, that represents the Holy Spirit or the memory of God's love in our minds. This ray thus unites us with our reality, even though we believe we are here in the world. You want to pick up from there?
Sure. And I just wanted to um, stop just a minute here at this place because when I read this, I thought of that passage in the Course that says the thought God has of you is like a star.
Uh-huh.
Do you know that section?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, when I first read it, that's the first thing I thought was, yeah, that's the thought God has of Bill. And it's the ray that's coming, one of the 12 great rays. And the other thing was, it just made me laugh when she says, and on the page before, and since this begins from last night, you weren't there at the time. I think just how she explains things and how she sees things is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also this statement, thus far but no further. That's from something else. I can't remember what it's from, but it is definitely from
Probably,
something
huh?
else.
Yeah.
Because I've read that before in I think in a Baha'i thing.
Hmm.
So not sure, but I think it does. Um, it's from some other scripture or something. Something. I don't know what. All right, so I have two screens up. So and I'm actually when I'm done reading this next section, I will I'm going to restart my other Zoom so that I can do things on both sides. Okay, so here we go. So let's see the next page. Helen's instructions to Bill continue. This is part of Helen's letter 6. The curious paradoxical thread in your life history is very striking. That is really because you were literally star-crossed. And in parentheses, at this point, I said, I don't believe in the influence of stars. I was right about this, but what happens is not that the stars themselves have influence, but a person chooses a particular star pattern because it shows him what the setting will be. This is, I have to just stop right here because honestly, I do astrology. I know Earl Purdy does astrology. A lot of Course in Miracles students that I know do astrology, and everybody's like, "Well, astrology, the stars don't have anything to do with you." No, it's not the stars. It's what what the particular influences that we attribute to ourselves based on, that particular, we put the star cluster there. It wasn't there and then we came about. We put it there. We put Aquarius where Aquarius is. We put Libra where Libra is, the time, everything. We did that as it's almost like a uh like a guidebook. It's almost, yeah, it is. It's like someone the other day was talking about the workbook, and I said, it's a playbook. It tells you what plays to make when. And that's what astrology, you may not believe in it, but it always works. And it works because we are the ones who put the pattern in. So that's a digression on my part from the reading. I just wanted to shout for joy at hearing Helen saying this to Bill in a letter.
Mhm. Yeah, I would add to that that it's always the world is an effect of our thinking. No matter how new age or metaphysical you want to get about it, right? But the point of the course is why, if the effects are illusory, why preoccupy ourselves with changing the cause of an illusion other than to go beyond illusions to reality? Reality being what doesn't change from the course's perspective, and so, and and the course's view is like, why would we want to um, really waste time by trying to manipulate the dream rather than waking up from it? Now, having said that, like you were saying, because we choose our grievances and our limitations, the astrological influences, if you will, archetypal qualities and values and so forth, um, probably have some consistency across different seeming aspects of our one reality that we're projecting into the world. So one can say, well, gee, while I'm really subservient only by choice to the ego's dictates, I'm oftentimes by default in a mindless way going to be somewhat zombie-like slave to the dictates of the attributes and aspects of that particular constellation of zodiacal influences. So, but the more we choose to see our minds as independent of the world and really the cause rather than the effect of it, the less those influences seem to be applicable. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does make perfect sense. And because as Glorian just posted in the chat, I don't know if you saw that. Let me go and look at that real quick. Um, she says, the feeling is that we're making the error real, but Jesus tells us all beliefs that lead to progress should be on.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
So
something that Ken points out in, I believe it's this book. What the Jesus's admonition to Helen is, never take another's path as your own, but neither should you condemn it, kind of thing. And I think that fits very nicely with that, we have no idea what's most helpful for anyone else. And I've dabbled with astrology from high school onward at different times, and it's not a current, passion or anything, but I've found a lot of interest in that subject. Recently, I just ran across, excuse me, ran, pardon me, ran across a really wonderful recording of the music "The Planets" by Gustav Holst that our mutual friend Dave Van Dyke and I put together a slideshow of mostly backpacking slides of Sierra Nevada set to that music. And it's just a wonderful recording and actually very inspiring music. And I was just listening to the other day, and Dave and I have commented to each other, in recent years. It's like there's been a lot of really excellent recordings, but none of them quite measure up to this one Deutsche Grammophon recording that his father had that we used for the slideshow, and we're so glad to have found it online because it's just a remarkable recording. Anyway, but
Yeah,
now I'm digressing even further. But
well, but I wanted to ask you, is that available? Are you?
I'll
Is
send
it
you
here
I'll
on
send you the
YouTube?
links to it. It's on YouTube. Yeah, all the
Okay, awesome, because then I can link it onto our YouTube and other folks can see it as well.
yeah. Let me find that.
So do you want me to continue reading, or did you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, go ahead and continue. Yeah, that was
Okay,
that was
all right.
but
So
interesting digression though, huh?
it is an interesting digression. And you know
Yep.
what else is an interesting digression? This is so amazing to me. You and I have been reading books together for, what, 10 years, maybe more. I don't even,
Give or take. Yeah.
yeah, it's a long, long time. We knew each other first from, I believe, from the Gary Renard Disappearance of the Universe group. I'm not
Mhm.
sure, but I think that's where I first
I think so. Yeah.
found you. And you were living in,
Castle Rock.
no, you were in someplace else before,
Oh,
California.
yeah, we were in Southern Oregon. Yeah, probably.
Oh, Southern Oregon. Yeah, that's right.
Right, right.
And so you and I first met there
Uh-huh.
in, in that situation.
Hmm.
And had and we have been doing this for quite some time before. I think before you went to Castle Rock. I'm not sure. But
Yeah, I think
anyway,
so. I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I joined the Course in Miracles group here in town, and your high school buddy, Dave Van Dyke, was a member of that group because he lives here in Pueblo. So
Uh-huh.
I got to know Dave, did
Yep.
know this connection with you. And then you moved to Castle Rock, you came to Colorado. I got to meet you and see you and all that business. And then now you've, moved around a couple other places. But
Yep.
it's just the the connection is so crazy. When you think about it, that, just from some little thing that, that this relationship, a teaching learning relationship has come together between us, and we're able
Mhm.
to share it so beautifully with so many other people. And it just shows you the power of this decision to heal the mind. It brings about miraculous coincidental connections that uh you know again lead to the achievement of the atonement. We're right here doing it right now. So anyway, okay. So I'm gonna start that paragraph over
Okay.
after this long interlude. The curious paradoxical thread in your life history is very striking. This is a letter from Helen to Bill. That is really because you were literally star-crossed. And in parentheses, she says, and the rest of this paragraph is in parentheses. At this point, I said, I don't believe in the influence of stars. I was right about this, but what happens is not that the stars themselves have influence, but a person chooses a particular star pattern because it shows him what the setting will be, shows him what he needs to learn. He merely reads the signs which show him the right setting. The influence comes from him, but the stars show him where the most appropriate influences will occur. And so, yeah, it's the star astrology is like a guidebook that we wrote about our journey here. The phrase, okay, so I guess, is this Ken? Okay, the phrase star-crossed refers to Bill's experience of the conflict between his parents, from which he felt very victimized. Helen, however, is telling him that the conflict was internal and was simply projected outward. Her comments about astrology are of note, for they support her position that we are not victimized by forces outside our minds. Helen is essentially saying that the constellations of stars do not have a causative influence on our lives, but rather a correlative one. In other words, the cause of our behavior lies in our minds beyond this physical world entirely. And the same decision that determines our behavior also determines the configuration of the stars. Understanding the setting of the stars and planets can help us to understand the choices we have made. It shows him what the setting will be, in quotes from that letter, but the stars themselves should not be attributed any causal power. So, Ken is just agreeing on that. So Helen goes on, referring again to Bill's belief that he was the victim of his parents, and takes the discussion one step further. This is Helen's letter continued. My question about was your father left-handed was not irrelevant, and I should have followed it up, but with a more open mind. It crossed my mind then that there is something in your heredity that is crossed or interfering with progress. One side seemed then to come from your mother and one side from your father. That interpretation of heredity, which was essentially genetic, was too liberal. You may have chosen them for that reason, but the actual conflict is in karmic inheritance. There were two equally strong forces in your karmic inheritance, which were entirely contradictory and which are in themselves irresolvable. At first, I thought that one was evil and the other good, but I don't think so now. The thing is that they were different and cannot be handled simultaneously. Taken together, they must induce paralysis or suspension. Taken one at a time, they will both lead to better unification. The first move out of the impasse had to come from you, by your making a real decision to stick with one and totally disregard the opposite pull. You did this when you suddenly decided to help me wholeheartedly. It's curious that what you saw in me was the one thing you were most afraid of. I was never star-crossed myself, but I was working under the influence of both sides of the same star.
Double agent, huh?
Wow.
I think we're all double agents here, working both sides of the blue dot in Ken's chart.
Yeah. It really,
Both
yeah.
both thought systems. We're trying to make the ego and Holy Spirit work simultaneously, and at some point we'll realize that may not succeed.
Yes, you cannot be in two worlds at the same time.
Mhm.
Wow. Interesting. This is just really interesting that Helen has these ideas of
Mhm.
karmic inheritance and forces outside of ourselves and forces within ourselves, and that we're the ones who are projecting the world as we see it. And this is prior to the course. So, these were
Mhm.
things that were in Helen's consciousness already. So maybe that's why she didn't get to, normally if you were if a voice in your mind was telling you something that was totally the opposite of everything you ever believed, um, you might think something went wrong and you would not be happy with it and you would probably not want to cooperate with it. But she was already leaning in these directions. She was already speculating, asking questions, and having all of these experiences just gave her more and more confirmation that uh, what was coming was actually valuable and that actually was an answer to some of the questions. So I love this. I'm so glad we're reading this book. Let's see. Let us continue. This is Ken speaking now. Helen is thus describing the different forms in which her and Bill's conflict manifest. Helen's within one star, representing the erratic, though strong nature of her strong-minded pull to God. Bill's between two stars, star-crossed, the conflict which greatly weakens his attraction to God. The quote, karmic inheritance, unquote, of Helen's explanation can be more properly understood as the conflict buried deep within Bill's mind between his pull towards God and his fear of aggressively seizing the divine power. That's interesting. Since time is ultimately nonlinear, the so-called past is simply symbolic of a more repressed thought that is actually coexistent with the more conscious ones experienced as occurring in the present. Note again, incidentally, the firmness of Helen's personal belief in reincarnation, clearly contradicting the much later anti-reincarnation statements in her autobiography. Yes, these statements supposedly reflect the belief she held from the same pre-course period as do these letters. This discrepancy in Helen's writings points up once again the occasional unreliability of her reporting. The statements from her autobiography, written much later than the described events, dramatically contrast with her actual experiments at the time. These later statements thus serve to protect Helen's public image as a rational and scientific atheist, not to mention they're serving a dramatic literary purpose as well. So this is just so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, for we do present different sides of ourselves in different situations.
Oh, of course, yeah. And how could we not? I mean, that's just the nature of how we perceive a portion of the world. We're going to see, we've made the world to by design to see things differently from every other part of the world, including every part of ourself that we made up. I mean, we we see ourselves in different contexts, and anything that's less than completely unified is necessarily going to be have some kind of conflict intrinsic to it, and therefore, you know, be unfulfilling at best and horrific at worst. And it's just things. But it's interesting, like you're pointing out. Helen's brilliant mind, was able to compartmentalize for the purpose of maintaining her public persona and identity. The different aspects of her awareness, and I mean, it's kind of epitomized by the fact that when Helen was, channeling the material, and Billa was typing it up, they locked the doors and closed the blinds, and it's like, talk about a covert operation. That in the halls of academia, that would have been a bit outrageous at the time. So, and they recognized that, but now probably still somewhat the same story, but at least now there's a precedent for it, and a lot of others have fallen suit in different ways, but including a lot of Me Too wannabe, you know, alleged sequels to the course and variations on it. So,
Oh my Lord, yes.
yeah.
It is interesting to me though that I remember when she was talking, that little interview that we have with her speaking, and she said, even in the midst of things going on, she's still taking down dictation. She's still writing stuff down, when she's meeting with people, when I mean, things are going on, and she is like just writing this stuff down, like it is pretty amazing to me that she uh was able to have the different personality. If you were looking, if I remember watching, I'll get a whole sentence out here in a minute. uh the one of those movies or TV shows about a person who has multiple personalities, and they have they're boys or girls, or they have different things going on, their children or adults, and all the different personalities have and they're fully formed personalities that are activating in this person. And I remember the first time I ever saw anything like that, and I was thinking about it, and I realized, well, geez, I have that too. And it's not because You know, I'm not fooling I'm not saying they're fooling themselves. I'm not saying that, you know, the Lynn that goes to work at the at the research lab is a different person, but she is a different person. These people that work with her do not know her in any way at all. Know
Mhm.
not the reality of, you know, her life. They only know what they see there. And you know, I still had, you know, lots of other, you know, the Lynn that goes to the meditation group. That's a whole different Lynn than the Lynn that you see working in the office or, you know, whatever. So, you know, we
Mhm.
all have that.
Yep.
It just, you know, that Helen had it in a uh, like brilliant way, you
Mhm.
know, that she
Mhm.
could have her cake and she could be at, you know, do it all, you know, at the same time. Uh, and so, and she didn't see it as contradictory.
Mhm.
Um, I
Well,
think,
in a sense, you know, we're all working through that schism that we made up. You know, we have a split mind, as the course points out, and you know, we can split it in counsel or countless ways. A moment ago, when you said I have that too, was thinking, well, with inflation, it could be I have that 3, 4, 5. But it also reminds me of this wonderful uh, quirky. Your mileage may vary, but my wife and I have been enjoying it, and we're eagerly awaiting the next season. We've watched a couple of seasons of this Apple TV program called Severance. Have you seen it?
no.
Oh, it's quite good. It's quite good. The premise is people that work for this large corporation, which has remarkable parallels to the, the Apple computer environment. I wonder how much of that is intentional, but and sort of like an internal, you know, humorous commentary on just corporate culture in general. But anyway, the premise is that a number of people at work, you know, these at these jobs, you know, complain of work-life balance issues, and so the solution and posited in this series, which is I think they're working on the third season, hopefully soon we'll see it, is well, let's devise a surgical implant that will detect when you're going down the elevator to this vast underground corporate complex and swap out all your home life and thoughts and memories for all your work life home, you know, thoughts and memories. And then at the end of the day, when you go up the elevator, it reverses the process. You know, what could possibly go wrong? Ha ha ha.
Wow. Hmm.
And it's sort of a film noir, but there's a humorous kind of quirky edginess to it that's really kind of interesting and simultaneously scary and funny. But anyway, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, can't wait to see what they do with the third season, because now, you know, there's some leakage going on, and anyway, without giving too much away. But
Interesting. Well, I'll have to check that out. And what is that on? Did you say Apple TV?
it's Apple TV. It's called Severance. Yeah, if you
I don't
haven't
have
seen
that,
it,
but
you might enjoy it. I think it's. I mean, it's very different. They have a quick aside. They have all this retro technology. Like they've got, you know, 4 people in this cubicles arranged in a sort of, you know, bird's eye swastika pattern, and or spiral kind of pattern. And but there's nothing else in this large room, and they're like the only employees that you see, but everything's all partitioned off, so nobody knows what the other divisions or other rooms are doing. And there's these long illuminated, you know, fluorescent illuminated corridors, and it's just it's anyway, it's a
well,
trip.
it
Yeah,
sounds interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, if we could do that,
But we've all severed our real identity, not only from each other and from our creator, but even within our own selves, which of course that's where the real severance, if you will, has taken appears to have taken place, but it really never happened, right? So yeah,
yeah, it never really happened.
yeah,
And that's interesting. I will have to check that out
yeah.
because those again, television shows, you know, those kind of programs are like the stars. They're also a guide to us and show
Uh-huh,
us
uh-huh.
something about our mind that we probably wouldn't be thinking about. And I know that you know, the people who make the thing are not saying, you know, I'm going to blow people's mind uh by uh, rearranging their, excuse me, their idea of reality.
Mhm.
They just say, oh, this would be an interesting concept. But when people who are open watch that stuff, they do have a shift. And what I noticed, and I don't know if maybe it's just, no, it's not me, just me. It's everywhere. I'm thinking, we're really into like the Marvel universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all that, the movies of the Avengers and uh, WandaVision, all these different Spider-Man, who's in there now. Anyway, all of these shows are coming up with time stories about time, the reality of time, the manipulation of time, the fact that in like the multiverse, it's the multiverse is the big deal, and we're seeing it in all these different programs where they're showing, yeah, I'm here, everything everywhere all at once, the movie. My husband just finally watched that yesterday. Um, this idea that we're everywhere in everything everywhere all at once, and that you know the every part of the dream, we are there because it doesn't really say it this way, but we're projecting all of it, and so we are, and we have access to every part of the dream, and that's what they're showing us in these shows. Why now are we seeing this um, discussion about time and the reality of time and the relevance of time? Why would something like that be coming about in such a mass marketing kind of way, except for that we're ready to see something different about what time is and what space is. And when that becomes uh it's almost like when Freud discovered that, it was the inner self, or the hidden self, that was making all the moves, or telling us the unconscious mind was
Mhm.
really the one who was running the show. How that shifted and changed the world, to have that understanding. And now we're getting shifting and changing the world with an understanding about time and time and space. Jesus tells us, understanding time is one of the main ways that you can come to recognize the truth about our reality. So, or the proper use of time.
Mhm.
So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is, all of these things, I can see them coming together to bring about a whole different way of thinking. And even, not to digress even more, but even the advent of these video games that our kids are playing, and even the most hideous ones that are full of violence, people die and they respawn. They come right back. They may have to go back and pick up their stuff, but they come, nobody actually dies
Uh-huh.
in the video games, right? Just like in the cartoons,
Yeah,
that
come
the
to think of it,
Coyote.
I don't think, because I used to watch Nancy's grandkids playing video games when we lived in Colorado, and I don't think I ever saw them pause the action part of the game to attend funerals or anything like that. There wasn't much of that going
No,
on those arcade games. Yeah.
no, yeah, exactly. I mean, but what it's given these kids the idea that, you know, you come back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You don't actually die. You just come back. And that being implanted in a lot of people's brains, or a lot of people's thinking, I think is kind of opening up things for
We
us.
just renew the subscription, or in the old paradigm, you put in more quarters in the machine, right?
Yeah, put more quarters in the machine. There you go. Yeah. But this machine doesn't require quarters, so it's good. It's awesome.
Right, right. But it does, every experience does require attention though. And I think that's what the course is focused on, is, what am I putting my attention on? I was listening to one of
Exactly.
Ken Wapnick's recordings this morning, and he was saying, how quickly do you think, your experience would change if every moment was, mindfully, actively, proactively at least, choosing Holy Spirit's translation of everything instead of ego's misinterpretation of everything. We did probably have a pretty different experience if we did that consistently. Now we're
Yeah.
just kind of dabblers, hobbyists for the most part.
But sometimes a
I'll speak for
bird.
myself anyway. I have to, notice how much of the day I spend still wanting to think, well, I'll just, like today I mentioned my wife's like, okay, I've gotten caught up with client work. Now I'm gonna focus on my own home projects. And it's like, yeah, but I could actually, no matter what I'm quote unquote working on or doing, really be mindful of the fact that I get to choose which thought system is guiding my mind, and then what I happen to be doing on the level of form, since of course reminds us it's never about behavior, is essentially relevant. Just do whatever you're going to be doing anyway, but do it with the Holy Spirit.
Do it with the Holy Spirit. And I mean, that's again why we do all the things we do, is to remind us of that. But and I guess the test is how quickly do we come back when
Right.
we have gone off, when we have, become disappointed about something, or afraid of, something, or worried about something, how quickly do we come back to, oh, you know,
It's our recovery rate, right?
exactly. And the faster that happens, the more peace we have, and the more peace we have, the more we want it. And that's to love peace and to want peace. Um, well, that's the purpose of the course, right? Inner peace. So there we go. All right, so we continue with our book. Uh,
Sure.
you want to read on? And I'm going to actually log out of this Zoom and log back in, because I'm not in as an admin, or whatever.
Okay.
So
All right. I'll
I'm
continue
gonna let
on.
you, yeah, you continue reading.
Okay. And I have us about a third of the way down on page 166 in the print version, and where Ken resumes with Helen's commentary. Ken says the discussion continues now with Helen's commentary. You couldn't stand the contradiction, which you know perhaps more about than I do, actually, and you felt an impelling need to resolve it. The result was that in me, the star, in parentheses, the one star, came into the right perspective. But at the same time, you gave up the influence of the crossing star in yourself and went sharply, in parentheses, and very correctly, close parentheses, in one direction. This is picked up this morning. I woke with a very clear but rather odd sentence. Wow. Okay. Quote, never underestimate the power of denial, unquote, on my mind. I'm going to pause there because I think that is a direct quote from the course, and I'm going to look it up. But I will go back to that. But I'm pretty sure it's not exactly in the course. It's really close. I'm sorry about this, but the one thing that saved the situation was that I meant it kindly. Unfortunately, it also leads to a curious ineffectualness in me and a real loss of rapport between us. I would
Uh,
like to repair this.
I don't want to interrupt you here, but there is a footnote there
Oh,
on this
okay. Oh, yes, yes. Oh,
power.
yeah. Oh, you're right. It is. And the footnote reads, this later found its way into the course in the form. Do not underestimate the power of the ego's belief in it, the attack on God. Yeah, so it's close enough. I mean, certainly the sentiment is identical. Yeah. Yep. Power of the mind, the power of denial. Yep. So I'd like to repair this. And in parentheses, Helen says, it won't hurt anybody anymore, but I do run the constant risk of not helping nearly as much as I should and must. The whole sentence was in parentheses. It is my own responsibility, and this was told me, in brackets, by Jesus, very sternly too. That's the close of the parentheses. To see to it that you understand, realize, and fully accept the fact that you are not star-crossed anymore. None of that matters now. The only reason why I was asked and even urged in puns to write this is because that you must learn that the past is helpful only as it contributes to the learning conditions in which you function in the present to create the future. And make no mistake, you do create it. Wow. I mean, that sounds like she's really quoting Jesus pretty directly there, particularly that last paragraph. We're not star-crossed anymore. Well, when we're in our right minds, when we're in the realm of Holy Spirit sanity, you know, in those lucid moments, we realize, we're not star-crossed. We're not trying to serve two masters or, be guided by two completely conflicting ideals. So, okay, Ken goes on. This latter point was an important one for Bill, as he felt clearly trapped by his unhappy past and tended to blame it for his current conflicts. Helen here was trying to free him of this. We will see the same, though more detailed, attempts made by Jesus in the Course's dictation to help Bill with this issue. Note also Helen's clarity about her decision not to hurt anyone anymore, but note as well the remaining ambivalence about the helping of others that clearly would interfere with the loving help she could really offer. And once again, Helen's story becomes our story, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. It's hard for me to imagine that. I mean, she was so clear on so much stuff.
Yeah.
Imagine the times when she wasn't clear.
And Ken points out in a number of places, both in this book as well as so much of his audio and video and writing, that when Helen was talking about the Course's metaphysics, and especially after the first 5 chapters or so of channeling the text, her clarity was just impeccable, and the clearness and the lucidity of and the direct connection to the quality of the message, I think, is evident for all of us, not because of the words so much, but what was behind the words that was conveyed as more of a gestalt, if you will. It's the wholeness of the message, that the words just faithfully reflected in their entirety the meaning that the Course has. And I think that's why with repeated readings, it's sort of like in the old days when we had dial-up modems, and sometimes pictures would come in and they'd build images a row at a time on our screen. And then, then they'd skip like maybe every third or fourth row, and then they'd come back and fill it in. It's almost like, with each pass, we get a little bit more clarity. And I think that's the whole image has really always been there. But, every iteration, we get a little bit more of the detail filled in to where we get a more complete picture. In this case, we're sort of like everything else doing the opposite. We're taking away all the differences and having the clarity of the vision of wholeness that the Course asks us to consider as our real way out of hell on our path to peace.
It's funny. Yeah, I love it. The dial-up modem or the dot matrix printer.
Yeah, exactly. But and if you watch artist work too, a lot of times they'll block in the big shapes, and then they'll add, if they start, for example, if they're going to paint a tree, they make the trunk and some of the main branches, and then the foreground and the sky, and then they'll come back and add some of the smaller limbs, and then finally some of the the tiniest branches, and all the way out to the leaves, kind of thing. But I mean, I'm generalizing greatly, but the idea, of course, is as we add more detail, the clarity is there. But in this case, since it's a holographic thing, the quality is there in the entire writing throughout the Course, and of course, a great deal of that is reflected in Ken's writing about it because he was so tuned into it.
Yeah, it just is a beautiful and amazing thing. Do you want me to continue reading?
Yeah, the other thing that I think, just to summarize that, maybe I didn't quite share that fully, was when Helen, another way of putting it too, I think adds a helpful note, is that, when Helen was on her own, like what's in the ego mode, if you will, and trying to, you know, do things about predicting the future on the level of form and things like that. Ken remarks frequently that she could be way off. But when she was, bringing through information that had to do with what applies to everyone, particularly with the course, the quality of her accuracy, not about specifics, but about what was, universally true, was just so impeccable. And but again, that's something that is true for all of us too. I mean, to some extent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the nature of truth. It,
Yeah.
it will always be impeccable, and speculation will always be wildly, wildly controllable, really. I mean, you can't predict speculation, and that's what we try to do, is predict things, but the reality, it just is natural and can't be contradicted. So
Yep.
yeah.
Really can't. We have just one page left in letter 7, if you want to finish that off.
Yeah, I will do that. So Helen's counsel to Bill continues. Bill, you can put it any way you want. Your house is ready, or the door is open, or there is only one star now. You must listen to me about this. You are perfectly free now. You weren't, but you are. It may take a little time before this is really accepted. Oddly enough, something to do with the time it takes for starlight to reach the earth. There can be a real time discrepancy here. And sometimes we can even see stars which are no longer there. Forget it. It's really gone. When it comes back, which will not be for some time, it too will be the only one. And so Ken says, Helen here insistently tells Bill that he no longer is a prisoner of his past. You are perfectly free now. Even though it still seems as if the past is the determining factor in Bill's life, the truth is that the past is undone. Astronomers teach that there is a time delay between the reality of the star's light and when we on Earth actually perceive it. Similarly, we may perceive a star's light when, in reality, the star has already disappeared. Bill's quote, star-crossed conflict is gone, despite his continued experience of it. In the world of illusion, some time must still elapse until this end of conflict is experienced by Bill, and his one self is known. It too will be the only one, to quote from the letter.
Mhm.
The letter concludes, the only thing that needs to be added here is another line from Wordsworth. The first line is not recorded here in brackets. It too was with me when I woke up, or maybe just a little after. The line is, and then in parentheses, please listen, fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. I always thought this is one of his better lines. The phone has just rung, and I said it to Joan, Helen's secretary. Yes, I want to speak to Dr. Thetford because this is finished. We'll be right over. I don't get that, but
Sounds like she's just making
she's
an
just writing
editorial note that the
phone
phone
number.
rang about the time she was finishing this
Okay.
this letter. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I want to speak to Dr. Thetford because this is finished. We'll be right over. Helen is thus urging Bill, finally, to choose to give up his fear of uniting with the one God, the one star, since on another level, he has already given up all other stars but this one. In other words, he is ready.
Hmm.
And is that the end of that?
That's the end of letter 6. Yep.
And letter 7 will start next week.
Yeah.
Well, we still have a few minutes, so um, you know, I just I keep thinking about that. Uh, thing in the course of the thought God has of you. And let's see if I can open it up. I got
Maybe we could read that section that was in the footnote.
oh yeah, let's do
Let's
that.
do not underestimate the power of the ego's belief in it.
Okay, where
Let's see if I can find that real quick.
oh, I'm looking for it now too.
Yeah, let's see.
Tell me what the
Okay, it was do not underestimate the power. We'll find it that way. That should show it up. Yep, it's chapter 11, section 5. Why don't I just read this
right.
is the waking to redemption. Should I just read the first 4 paragraphs and you can read from there? How's that sound?
Yeah.
Okay. This
Wait,
is
looking to redemption, section 6.
Yep. Yeah, so it's text chapter 11, section 6.
Okay.
And it's actually, well, why don't I'll just read the paragraph 5. How's that? And then we can go back or forward depending on how much we talk about it in the next 3 minutes, right? Do not underestimate the power of the devotion of God's Son, nor the power of the God he worships as over him. Well, that's the power of our mind, right? It's huge, right? For he places himself at the altar of his God, whether it be the God he made, lowercase g, or the God who, uppercase G, who created him. And there's, in that blue dot in any given moment, in that decision-making mind, the blue dot merely Ken's little graphic symbol for the decision-making mind. We're either choosing the ego or Holy Spirit every moment. That is why his slavery is as complete as his freedom, for he will obey only the God he accepts. The God of crucifixion demands that he crucify, and his worshippers obey. In his name they crucify themselves, believing that the power of the Son of God is born of sacrifice and pain. The God of resurrection demands nothing, for he does not will to take away. He does not require obedience, for obedience supplies submission. He would only have you learn your will and follow it, not in the spirit of sacrifice and submission, but in the gladness of freedom. And that's why there's no coercion or no, nothing even resembling anything like that kind of pressure in the Course. It merely just says, you'll feel better in a very authoritative but not authoritarian way if you question the ego's demands of our mind. And it's question the sacrifice. The only thing we're asked to sacrifice is the idea of sacrifice, in fact.
Yeah, which is today's lesson.
Mm-hmm.
All about that very thing. That
Yeah.
the idea of it's so beautiful that you read this, because look how beautiful this is. It really is pointing out that that God is not asking us for anything. He's not saying, give me what you got. What God is saying, get what you have.
By giving it away. Because minds are joined, right?
Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah. Should we read the lesson real quick?
Sure. Let me go get that real quick here.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start reading it since we only got a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay, lesson 343, today's workbook lesson. I'm not asked to make a sacrifice to find the mercy and the peace of God. The end of suffering cannot be loss. The gift of everything can be but gain. You only give. You never take away. And you created me to be like you, so sacrifice becomes impossible for me as well as you. I too must give, and so all things are given unto me forever and forever. As I was created, I remain. Your Son can make no sacrifice, for he must be complete, having the function of completing you. I am complete because I am your Son. I cannot lose, for I can only give, and everything is mine eternally. The mercy and the peace of God are free. Salvation has no cost. It is a gift that must be freely given and received. And it is thus, and that is this, that we would learn today. So, on that note, I want to thank you again, Lynn, for sharing a wonderful hour with me and reading Ken's wonderful work about the course. So,
Thank you so much, Bruce Rawls. I
yeah,
so appreciate you.
likewise, look forward to next week.
Absolutely. Yay, yay, yay. All right.
Have a great one.
You too, buddy. And definitely hoping that you have a great week. And are you guys getting any weather down there? Snow or rain or anything?
We had a little bit of rain, but just it's very brief. Yeah, now it's just cool, but mostly sunny. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got snow, so
All right.
it feels like Christmas.